everyone, welcome back to Lather Talk, a wet shaving podcast. I'm your host, John, aka Lather Hog, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Gerard.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Hey, Gerard. So our guest for today is none other than Ben Esposito, the artisan behind House of Mammoth. Welcome to the show, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John and Gerard. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys.
All right, Ben. So folks who are really into the wet shaving hobby probably already know all about Mammoth, but in case, what is your elevator pitch for someone who has never heard of House of Mammoth and previously you were known as Mammoth Soaps? Give me the pitch.
Sure. So Mammoth basically is a wet shaving brand. We started as a wet shaving brand, but we've always had a focus on two things. One is original perfumery, and the other thing is raising awareness and funds to fight against human trafficking in the world. So we really try to put out the best quality products that we can, try to put out something that's interesting that folks really haven't seen or tried before from other brands. And at the same time, we try to do everything that we do with heart. We like to make connections with people and really, I really think that that's one of the reasons why the shave community is so special to everybody is we get a chance to connect with each other. So as an artisan, that's really what I want to do. I want to reach out to people, and I love the idea that people are using and enjoying the stuff that I make.
Excellent. And would you call yourself a wet shaving hobbyist or enthusiast?
I mean, absolutely. I got into this hobby really because I was just looking for a new way to shave, and probably like a lot of you guys, read the articles about shaving like your grandpa and shaving like a man, and I had a friend Matt, and of course you, John, but my friend Matt was really into it, and I used to go over his house and he would pull out his shave soaps. This one's dark fall and it smells like smoke, and he was like really into it. So, we were all huffing soaps in his living room. And then eventually I figured, all right, let me give this a try. I bought a starter kit from Maggots and, got into it. Felt pretty badass, I'm sure like you guys can relate. And that one thing led to another. I mean, I've always made bath soap, so it was just kind of a natural thing to say, what's the deal with shave soap? What makes it different from bath soap? Obviously, the performance is so different. So the formulation is also really different too. And that really kind of started me off in two directions. One was really being curious about what other artisans were doing, and then also wanted to learn how to do the best quality of a shave soap myself. And of course, along the way, I mean, you guys probably know people get so excited when they hear that someone new is making soap or scents or whatever it is. And so people were asking to try it, and people were really encouraging in the hobby. And so I spent about a year and made about 30 different versions of the shave soap, and just kind of refining and doing a lot of mistake making and lots of failure, getting rid of soap and giving a lot of stuff away too. I didn't accept $1 for any of the experimental batches because I just felt like, no, I want to make sure that this thing is top tier before I really put it out for sale. And I really only started thinking about doing things for sale when someone said, my friend Matt, different Matt than the other one, had said, hey, I really love Superman, and I would love to ask if you could make a special set that kind of pays homage to Superman. And so we came up with the idea, kryptonite, and he really liked lime, and so that kind of like snowballed from there. So we collaborated together on the scent. I made him a bunch of different scent mods, and it just felt to me at the time just like another way to get deeper into the hobby that I was really enjoying. I could never have foreseen, now, what is this, like 2.5, 3 years later, and all the changes that we've gone through as a brand, and all the connections and friendships that I've been able to make. It's just been a really special journey. And I think the shave hobby is awesome. And I'm always going to be a hobbyist first in my mind.
For hobbyists, right? A lot of people specialize in certain things, whether it be software, brushes, razors. Would you say you gravitate to any one direction, or do you try to cover a little bit of all? What's your interaction, your engagement with the hobby itself?
Yeah, I mean, I went through phases. I think originally I just didn't want to spend a lot of money, but I wanted to try as much as I could. So I bought a ton of samples of mainly soap. And I figured that was the best way to really try tons of scents and tons of different soap bases from different artisans. I still recommend that, by the way, if you can get samples, either by trading with somebody or buying them from someone, some retailer that or artisan that does samples. But then I started to realize, okay, well, there's aftershaves, there's brushes, there's razors. And so the more I got into it, that's when I sort of like moved on to, all right, now I'm going to try a couple of different razors. Oh, let me figure out what I like. So I went through a vintage phase. I wasn't trying any modern razors at all. I was just trying all vintage razors, one to the next to the next. Then I started getting into brushes too. You know, I still remember my first artisan brush was from Lowborn, who Logan Tudor is not in the hobby anymore, but just a great dude. And I remember really wanting a brush from That Darn Rob, but they were so pricey. You know, I think there was a meetup happening locally, and the meetup brush was like $80 or something like that over at Pester's. And I remember thinking, man, I can't spend that. That's just, I couldn't justify that to myself, let alone anybody else. So, you know, I didn't buy that. And I was kind of like kicking myself when I got to the meetup and I saw them and I was like, wow, and everybody's looking at them and these things are really awesome. We start to realize that there is art that goes into that. There's creativity, there's thought. And then there's a bit of experimentation and a bit of kind of go with the flow and, you know, unpredictability that goes into the brush making also. So I kind of like that aspect of it too. You know, the resins especially like capture moments in time that are frozen, you know, because they pour the resins together and they come up with really cool patterns, but then they slowly harden and solidify, or some of them, you know, under pressure. So they've captured, you know, those colors and that motion in the brush. But then I've always really loved organic materials. So wooden brushes are like still my jam. I really, really love, you know, the look of natural wooden brushes and grain and stuff like that. So I don't know if it come through, but like, that's my tattoo. I went through some major stuff in my life at one point. And I got that tattoo just kind of symbolizing like the progression of life and how the different rings in a tree show you basically each version of the tree is contained in the heart of the tree. And a tree starts here and then it grows, you know, from the inside out. So in a very real sense, the tree is like every version of itself that it's been every year is still there inside. So that's why I got that. And so for me, you know, the connection to nature and organic materials and everything, that kind of like physical aspect of it was really, really cool. So I really like wooden brushes. Once I got over the hump of buying my first artisan brush, I think that kind of like opened the floodgates, and that was it. You know, like, all right, now I got to try everything. You know, thank God for the Shave Bazaar and for, you know, BSTs and stuff, because I was buying like whatever I could find and reselling and buying more. And, you know, I'm still doing that, you know, nowadays. So I don't know, I've really gone through phases. Right now, I'm kind of in a phase of trying a lot of fragrances and trying to see what else is out there. And when I buy stuff from other shave artisans, I'm generally buying aftershaves because I just want the experience of the scent. Like I generally know what the soap base is going to be, but I'm really just looking for like new scents and seeing what other people are doing.
So you're describing kind of like the origin of Mammoth, right? And to kind of, I guess, kind of fill in some of the blanks and to bring us up to speed to where we are today, a little bit of the history of Mammoth, and correct me if I'm wrong, either, you know, Ben or Gerard, but you and I believe your wife basically are the ones making the soap at home in that first year or so, right? Elaine helped as well.
Yeah. So Elaine and I, my wife is Elaine. When we were dating, you know, we just sort of are both very curious people. You know, my wife is from the other side of the world. You know, she grew up in Malaysia, and we just have like kind of wide-eyed curiosity about the world. And so it's kind of this idea of like, how does that work? And oh, someone else is doing that. Oh, I want to try. You know, it's kind of like a childlike approach to life. And so we went to my friend's place in Oregon. They live in Eugene, Oregon. And we were staying with them, and just really special people. The one guy is a musician, and his wife is a photographer. and we just had a chance to spend, just a couple of days with them. And we were staying in their house, and they have like a soap in their bathroom. And I'm like, what is this soap? It's incredible. It's like really, really great. And they said, well, we made that soap. They showed me, they had like a book where they were learning how to make that soap. So of course, me and Elaine were like, we have to try this, So when we got home from that trip, I went and I ordered a kit from like Brambleberry or some DIY kind of thing. And I didn't do the melt and pour. You can like buy pre-made soap and you can just like melt it slowly and then add fragrance to it and then put it into a mold and you can create blocks or whatever shapes you want. That's fun, I guess. But we were like, no, we really want to do the real thing. We want to like do the soap reaction where we use the lye and the fats and want to see it turn from oils and fats and turn into soap. Is dangerous and exciting and everything. So we started making bar soap in my apartment, and along the way, just kind of messing with scents too, because, sure, unscented soap is fine, but why not? Right. So we got a couple of essential oils, and that was the way we knew how to do it,
Yeah.
So when we ended up getting married, we had a very DIY wedding, for the same reasons, I guess. We love to do this stuff ourselves. Like, we got to make a lot of soap, for our wedding guests. So we made a soap for everybody and handed out bar soaps to everybody and kind of created a custom scent that we both loved and we had been using in the bar soap. And it had like lavender and orange and kind of this milky creaminess to it. And it was really, really nice. So that was kind of the start of making the soap. When I got into the shave hobby, my wife doesn't shave. That's probably too much information for a podcast. But, but the shaving thing was mine. But she's really been like such a great support behind it. And she really is a collaborator in every sense of the word. So I'm the one that sort of learned and formulated the shaving soap. But she was the one that, kind of discussed all of the ideas, and I told her what I was doing, and she worked with me and helped me think with things like labels. And she's a designer, so she was able to help me with the design ideas. I had an illustrator that created the logo, but then every other thing after we got that logo from the illustrator, commissioned was all me and Elaine. And she's got the technical skills, and I'm like the creative director. Change that. Oh, can you do this? What if we tried it this way? And so she's like, and she can like make it all happen. So we're a really good team. And then when we started getting into making scents and discussing ideas for different scents, that's always a collaborative effort between me and her, where, I would say, well, I'm thinking about calling it this. What do you think? Does it ring? And it's so important, if you're creating anything, to have somebody that you can bounce back and forth with, because something might sound great in your mind, but does it translate? Can you communicate that to somebody else? When you tell somebody about it, do they get it? Do they understand? So that's one thing. And then for scents, she's just got a great nose. So it really helped me too. I'd be formulating something, coming up with different versions and smell this, smell that. What do you think? Oh, this one smells a little bit too much that. This one smells, and then I would take that feedback and I would go back. And it was so helpful for me in terms of training my nose and in practicing and figuring out, am I communicating the thing that I want to communicate? So I'd say it's a team effort in that sense. In a lot of ways, it's really mine, but it wouldn't be anything without her. So basically, once I got to a point where I'm like, okay, somebody came to me and commissioned a soap, and that was Matt with the Kryptonite soap. And I said, wow, people want to buy this. This is really cool, but I also have a full-time job. I run a nonprofit summer camp for kids, and it's a year-round full-time job. I can't, I'm the boss over there. I got to do that. So I didn't think that there was any way that I could really do anything more than sort of like one-offs and that kind of thing, stuff for fun. I was really heavily involved in a lot of like the Facebook groups. I was lurking in Reddit wet shaving. I was afraid, I was lurking and I was afraid for a number of years. In
As
Reddit.
One should be.
Yes. And you should be even more afraid if you're an artisan. But yeah, no, our /wet shaving is a great community because there's so many people there, and it truly belongs to the users, you know. So I went there and got a lot of laughs, and, you know, everything from lather games to reviews to, you know, just really getting a chance to hear what people were making and what people were saying, what people were using. And then Facebook groups like the Shave Market and Old Cahaba and a whole bunch of groups like that. Just really, really great people, you know. And so whenever I would come out with a new base, as I was formulating, you know, I would see if anybody wanted it, you know. And so I was shipping stuff out to people, and hey, try it. Let me know if you have any feedback, and kind of like organically developing a tester pool through that. You know, I didn't know any of these people. It's just like, give me your address, I'm gonna send you something. You know, okay, fine. This one's going to Ohio. This one's going to, you know, Vermont. Just soap everywhere. And just footing the bill. But it was fun, you know, so I didn't really look at it as like, you know, a business venture, or that I had to like meet certain goals or be profitable or whatever. It was just something that I was enjoying doing. Mm-hmm. And it was a way for me to interact with people too. So once this felt like, oh, people might actually pay for this, I thought, well, is there a way that I can do this? And I thought about, you know, some of the retailers, and what I had heard was that they expect you to keep things fully stocked all the time. And I was like, I just don't have time, you know, like, I don't know if people are even going to buy it, but what if they buy it? You know, like that was like a nightmare. People might actually buy it, and then I'm going to be stuck in production. You know, I like doing things to solve problems, but I don't like doing things to be like a worker bee. This is my free time. This is something I enjoy. You know, mm-hmm. I don't want to be doing this as a second job. But then, you know, one of my friends, Chad Irish from Talbot Soaps, I was watching what he was doing, and it was pretty cool. He was doing it through Etsy, and I was thinking, I wonder if I can do something like that. Just doing small batches whenever he could, similar to me. You know, he's a dad, the family, and a job, and he was able to make it work. And he actually, more importantly, was also using it as a vehicle to raise awareness and funds for something that he really cared about, you know, which was, you know, land preservation and the natural spaces and things. And that's something that I always loved too. So, you know, we had that in common. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool to see, you know, that he kind of paved the way in a lot of ways, I think, for the small batch hobbyist soap maker to be able to come out with stuff and have kind of a legitimate way to do it without having to be a full-timer. So I saw that as something that might be a possibility, and I was kind of weighing, you know, what does it look like? What are the financials? And then somehow, I'm not really sure, somebody recommended me to Jared and to the guys over at WCS. And I remember I was scared, pantsless, let's say. But talked to him. You know, I'm like, who are these people? Like, are they going to try to steal my stuff? You know, are they going to pay? Like, what's going on? Like, I was like, so, you know, don't want to do it. But thankfully, they were great. You know, and WCS was awesome. I remember I sent my first soap out to them. It was Hugo. And I remember Abe and Kevin from WCS called me, or tried to like FaceTime me. I'm like, I'm like, who's calling me like on this video message? And I pull over into a parking lot because it's randomly Abe. And dude, we just got the soap and we have to FaceTime you. We have to video chat with you. Okay, sure. So I pull in a parking lot, and they're both like on the screen, like, it smells amazing, you know, and they're like so excited, you know. And that was the moment where I was like, all right, this is cool. You know, mm-hmm. because I put a lot of time and effort into creating that product. You know, I think a lot of people think, sure, I could be a soap maker. That's easy. You know, just get, you know, a soap recipe and just make it and dump in some pre-blend fragrance and put a label on there. I mean, you guys could probably do the same thing. You could probably just like come out with any random, soap company name with like a style of different scents, and you could just like really easily spool it off in like less than a few minutes, you know. And there's a lot of brands out there that do that, but I felt like I put all this time and effort in and developing original scents too, because, you know, sort of when I joined the hobby, a lot of people were getting like a lot of flack for doing dupes, and I was like, I'm gonna fly above that and just kind of avoid. So I'm just going to make my own scents because I enjoy, you know, cooking and all that other stuff. And so I was really informed by that. So Hugo was the first time that I was putting something out the tub, I mean, the artwork. You don't think about it. Like every aspect of this has to be planned, has to be purchased. You have to put all this money into deciding, you know, what the final presentation is going to be. Then all the stuff arrives and you're making it, you know, and like there's timing and there's measuring and you've got to have focus and attention and everything's got to come together properly. And you finally come out with this finished product, you know, and trying to make sure that there's no bubbles in the label and everything's packaged well. And I'll make sure that when this person receives it, that it really makes them feel good that they've got something that's quality. And communicating that to them in a lot of different ways other than just using words like I am right now. So to see that it just like hit home with them, you know, and I don't know if they were just buttering me up or whatever, but like they seemed genuinely excited. And I was like, okay, we might have something here. And I felt really good about being with them. So for that first year or so, that was really what I did. Every month or so, I put out a scent, tried to make as much as I could, which is basically like one pot, one big batch of soaps. I would have to carve out like 5 or 6 hours to just like measure, clean everything, you know, get everything ready, get all the soap, you know, whatever, and make the soap. And then I put in these big boxes and ship it off to WCS. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And along the way doing fundraisers, and people were really confused about what I was doing. Like some people got it right away. They were like, we get it. We're all about this small batch, you know, original scents, raising funds and awareness to fight human trafficking. We get it. You know, it's easy, right? There are other people that are like, okay, but what are you really about? You know, where's the devil behind all of this? You know, like this couldn't actually be happening, right? So just dealing with like all the random like drama, and the most unexpected drama, I would say, was about the stuff selling out. Like I had no expectation that it was going to sell out. I had no idea how big the community was. No idea that anybody would want to spend any kind of money. I felt like I really agonized over setting the price, because at the time, you know, my soap was priced on the higher end of the market. And I agonized over it. And I remember thinking like people are going to be mad, but like I had to charge what I felt like it made sense for me to be able to continue. And it was the response was the opposite. We want more. And I had a big problem. Like people were messaging me at all hours of the day and night. You know, like I'm at work, I'm trying to spend time with my wife, trying to take care of my child. I had a newborn, just like you, Gerard. You know, so all right, fine. 2 a.m. I can respond to people because I'm up anyway. You know, so I'm like chatting with people all hours of the day and night. You know, people are trying to like wrangle deals with me. Like, don't worry, I won't tell anybody. Just send it to me. Can you just like set aside one? You've got extra. I know you've got more. Just put one aside for me. I'll pay you extra. Hey, look, we go back, you and me, right? I mean, and everybody had that feeling of like, you know, I mean, I make good connections with people. So I guess, you know, everyone thought that, you know, they could just take advantage or whatever. And it started to become really hard. Like I mentioned before, I consider myself a hobbyist first. So it was like, how do you turn down your fellow shavers when I know what that feeling is like? I know what it's like to like want that soap and to like not be able to get it. So I think that's why it really hit me so hard when I saw all the scalpers out on the market, you know, and people like have given me flack for that, but I don't give a shit. Like I am always going to call out scalpers because you're an asshole. Like we're all in this community together, loving the stuff that we love, man. Right? And you're the bully who just like grabbed somebody's lunch away from them when they could have been eating it, and you grabbed it away from them and you said, I'm going to sell you back your lunch. Give me your money or you don't get it, you know? And that's basically the attitude that these people had. So being the person that came from like this love of the hobby and then the heart behind what I was trying to do and wanting it to be in the hands of people that really loved it. I mean, I never set out to make a collectible. So it just felt like such a slap in the face to me and everybody that enjoys the stuff that I do. So I think that it's since that point, it was kind of in the back of my mind of like, if there's ever an opportunity for me to make this stuff more widely available, I want to take it. because it means that much to me. I had a sense that like it was going to be impossible, because unless I lost my job, I wasn't going to be able to produce it. But I had that in the back of my mind, and maybe there's some way that I could do this. But that's what I did. You know, we did basically $0.01 a month for like at a record pace, and it was grueling and it was crazy, and I probably shouldn't have done so many. I'm back doing it again this year, putting out so much stuff back to back to back to back, and again, you know, people are still like, "Where is it?" You know, I want it right away. But it is what it is. I get it. So that was the first year and a half or so of Mammoth. Everything was sold through WCS. It sold out immediately. Every time I released a new scent, people were clamoring for it. There was always drama. I got in the habit after selling out and the complaints started to come in, that I would just go and like, as kind of like a post-drop ritual, I would go and make bath soap, but I made salt bars. There's like a salt that came up with a salt bar recipe. So you can actually make soap, bar soap, bath soap with salt in it. And I was using pink Mediterranean sea salt. It was such a nice soap. But it was also kind of a way for me to just kind of like symbolically like pour the salt into the soap. You guys don't get what salt is as a metaphor. Like, it's when people are mad at you and they don't feel good and they're taking it out on you. So I'd pour all the salt into the soap and like let it cool and harden. And now I had a really nice bath soap. So along the way, just trying to like not take myself too seriously and just be like, I'm in this for good reasons. And the truth of what the product is and who I am doesn't matter to some of these people. And I have to just let it go and let them be salty if they're going to be salty. Because that's a them problem. It's not a me problem. Best I can do is just be true, communicate clearly, and that's it. So that was basically what I did. Once all the pandemic hit, you know, it was like everything was just off the table, as you guys know. What's going to happen with my job, and you know, what's the right? We take care of kids in a recreational setting, so hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids come to my program, and they're supervised by high school and college students mainly. A lot of teachers and a lot of parents and stuff too, but mainly supervised by high school and college students. So the idea of being very early on in a pandemic and, hey, we can take care of all these kids with like sort of young, inexperienced caretakers, it was just like really tough. So I didn't put anything out for like most of 2020. Came to like the summer-ish or so, and we decided that we weren't going to run the program, and suddenly I had a little bit more time on my hands. So I put out Stones and I put out Restore, just, you know, from my site, just to see like, well, what is it like if I'd never actually sold a drop from my site. And also the Santal Noir collab with Dan from Australian Private Reserve. So I'd never done a drop from my site, did the drop, smaller drop with Private Reserve, and then a dual scent drop with Restore and Stones, and was like, okay, this isn't going to happen either. Like, I am not, I'm not doing this, man. Like, it's enough to like come up with everything, create it, produce it, all this other stuff. But then I've also got to like field orders, and I've got to put them in boxes, and I've got to pack it and ship it. And then I've got to feel like all the complaints about like, why is my package not here yet? Something cap broken shipping, and I've got to replace. I mean, just like, it just never ends, right? So like I doubled my whole workload. Like, this isn't going to work either. But along the way, you know, you guys know that we developed this partnership with Vita from Chicago Grooming Company, formerly, well, Oleo still exists, but you know, the shave side is now Chicago Grooming Company.
Right.
And Vita is somebody that I met early on and just had a lot of respect for as an artisan. And then of course I got a chance to meet her. WCS had a dinner in the city one February. Got a chance to meet her. I had already met and talked with a whole bunch of other folks from the hobby, you know, other artisans and so on. So it was cool. So I was like, Vita, look, I know that you can make everything on the planet when it comes to like skincare and soap, right? She's a genius. She's amazing. Vita, there is no alcohol right now. right? Because everyone is splashing it on themselves. People splashing alcohol on their cereal boxes that they get from the grocery store. There's no alcohol to be had because we're in a pandemic and everyone's trying to like stay clean and not die. So can you develop some kind of like post-shave product with my fragrance, but like, you know, using your good oleo? And at first I was thinking maybe it can just be like a skin oil or whatever, and that would be fine. But then I was like, can you do like an aftershave balm? Can you do like, you don't have that right now. She had a few different balms and lotions, but something that's like a runny thing that's more of like like only for aftershave. Okay, sure, yeah, let me see what I can do. And so that kind of led to that collaboration for Stones and Restore, that she made a balm product. And I thought, you know, this will be a great way to have a set, because everybody really likes having sets. And I worked hard on those fragrances, and I really wanted to put it out in EDP. And it would be super weird to just like have a soap and an EDP. Like, let's have something, you know. So she came out with that, and she sent over a few versions. We talked about it. She pretty much nailed it from the beginning. And from there, like, all we were talking about was just like, okay, well, what's the scent strength, and, you know, how much fragrance do you need, you know, and artwork, I'll send you labels. So that went so well, and the balm was so well received that I started like thinking in the back of my head, you know, I hate making soap. I don't like fulfillment either, right? So maybe I'm gonna go back to WCS when all this is over, and let them do all the headachy stuff. But maybe Vita could make my soap as well. You know, I had spent most of the beginning of 2020 reformulating and trying to fix some of the and improve some of the things in my original shave soap base. Namely, I was trying to find a shave soap that not only was slicker, had better density, post shave, all that good stuff that everybody wants, but I also wanted it to be as transparent as possible when it came to scent. I didn't want to have any base funk that would interfere with the scent. It's one of like my pet peeves. And then I also wanted it to stay fluid or liquid at a low temperature. So I hadn't put out anything in 2020 at all. I was working on my new soap base. And one of my goals with the soap base was that I wanted it to stay fluid at a lower temperature. And the reason why that's really important is because, you know, Mammoth is a company where we're really trying to honor and celebrate fragrances, and all the fragrances that we put into the soap and splash and whatever are all originals. So it's really important that that stays as true as possible in shave soap. But unfortunately, shave soap is hot process, which means that it's cooked at a high temperature. So there was a point at which, you know, depending on your formula, as the soap cools after it's cooked, as the soap cools, you've got to mix your fragrance in, and it's still going to be hot. Fragrance doesn't do really well with heat. You know, if you guys know, if you want to store your fragrances, you don't want to put them near your stove or out in the sun or anything like that, right? So it's the same thing, you know, when we're making fragrance and adding it to hot processed shave soap. So it's really desirable, you know, at least for me, one of my goals was to be able to shave soap that stayed fluid at a low temperature, as low as possible. You know, I know a lot of shavers don't want a soft soap, but you can do things with the composition of your formula to keep your shave soap fluid at a lower temperature. And that means that you can go lower and lower and lower. You can then be adding your fragrance at a cooler temperature, and thus preserving more of the original fragrance materials. They're not going to burn off. In some ways, it's kind of like chasing something that you're never really going to catch anyway, because soap is not a transparent medium for fragrance. You're really not going to get a good impression of a scent just by using the shave soap. But I just can't help myself, like just continuous improvement. Like if it's something that I can fix, then I want to do it. So that was one of the goals with Tusk. Once I kind of solved the problems that I wanted to solve, like once I created the Tusk base, I really had no interest in continuing to like manufacture and like mass produce. But people were giving me so much great feedback and saying, you know, we want more of it. and I had had such a great experience with Vita and working together on the balm. And so I said to her, look, Vita, this is kind of like a little bit out of left field, but what do you think about trying my safe soap base, trying to make it? And, without getting into too many of the technical details, everybody makes their soap a little bit differently. And, everyone's very protective of their secrets, and the way that they do things is really important. Especially,
trade secrets.
Yeah. I mean, look, you put a lot of hard work into it, and not to go on a tangent, but like soap makers sometimes reach out to me and they ask, and fragrance makers, how do you do this? And where did you get this from? And what are you, and it's always such a hard thing. Cause like you want to be a nice person, but also like I worked my ass off to figure out how to learn how to do this. Like there was a lot of failure involved and a lot of investment and a lot of time. So I can't just like tell you what I do. That's part of the magic. That's why people buy what I make, because, I got to that point. I put that work in. So it was a big, vote of confidence and trust in Vita, and just knowing what kind of person she is, that it was fine, for me to give her my formula and walk her through my process. And we went through a process of, documentation. I wrote down not just quantities and formulas, but I even took down video and sent her just so that she could see, everything that I was doing, and filter that through her knowledge and experience. Vita, a lot of people probably already know, but Vita is far more experienced of a soap maker than I am. So I had no doubts about her abilities to be able to reproduce the soap base. I was actually almost a little embarrassed, like, what if I'm doing unnecessary steps, or what if I'm doing stuff where I'm like wasting materials, expensive stuff, and just putting it into something that's not really doing anything. But anyway, thankfully, Vita was able to nail it. We went back, she sent me some testers and I was like, this is amazing. This is Tusk, and that was like a really, big moment. So from there, it was really just a matter of talking about, what would this look like? I really didn't want Vita to be sort of like a ghost in the background, and sort of pretend that I'm making everything, because I just don't like to lie, and I don't want to pretend that like I'm making it when I'm not making it. Like, I know I came up with all this stuff. She's making it, like that's not a problem for me. Some people, it's a problem. Some people feel like, I've got to keep up this image of like, I'm doing everything. Well, look, I mean, a lot of the shave artisans have minions working for them anyway, so they're not doing everything. But it's still handmade, it's still made carefully. It's still a formula that they've developed. It's a scent and a product that they've created. Plus, I mean, Vita's amazing. People know and love her. That's like a huge honor that she would be willing to work together with me to bring Mammoth to a wider audience. So that was what I told her. She said, no, I'm going to be a ghost. I'm going to work in the background, just white label for you. And I said, no, like, I want everyone to know that you're making it. Right. And so we went forward with that. So she's Mammoth's production partner, is the way that I like to describe it. I come up with all of the scents, me and Elaine come up with all of the scents, the fragrances, the concepts, the artwork, the labels, sort of the business end of all of the Mammoth brand and connections and marketing and all that other stuff. And I send fragrance out to Vita, and then she puts it in soap and balm and basically fulfills for me. She sends the orders out to people. So that's why you're going to see, like, I'm in New York and she's in Chicago. So we're like a multi-city operation at this point. Right.
Pretty cool.
But still,
you've gone national.
We've gone national. Exactly. So, and then WCS, on the West Coast. Right. And who else is over there? The Handlebar Supply is over on the West Coast also. So
Handlebar Supply. Yep.
Handlebar Supply. So it's actually been great, so far. So our test run was the first Mood Indigo drop, which went through the House of Mammoth website, and it went really well. People loved it. People were stoked to be able to get, Mood Indigo is probably one of the most well-received scents that we've done. People loved it, and they loved the Tusk base, and they loved the Mammoth Magic Balm. And so we said, all right, we can do this. Let's get some stuff out to retailers. You know, we had a few hitches with supply chain, but slowly stuff is starting to pop up on various retail websites, and it's very cool to be able to tell people, you know, hey, you can find it at all these different retailers. Unfortunately, we're still selling out of stuff, which is just like, it's really mind-boggling to me. Like, you go to my website right now and like, we're sold out of stuff. Like, it's just, I mean, it's crazy. You know, I think almond leather sets is all we have left. There's like 2, you know, it's crazy, right? But more is coming, more is coming. Well, and we got some new scents coming out and stuff like that too. So eventually, you know.
I'll say it's worth making a note though, that the period of release to selling out though has greatly extended from, you know, I think you saw selling out within a minute or 2 at one point with the really small, that testing period. But then, like how long did the most recent release of like almond leather and the restock, like it was there for a week?
There for a couple of days, yeah, at least. Maybe as much as a week. Yeah. I mean, and we're making hundreds of sets. So we're really working hard for like a long period of time, and like this stuff takes time to make, you know, like you think about like how much it just takes a lot of time. Like, this is not a mass produced product. These are artisan made, handmade, hand applied labels. I mean, this stuff is like, it's done with care by hand. So the fact that we were able to do that, you know, with the partnership with Vita, I mean, that's something that would not have been able to happen otherwise. And her standard of quality and her expertise is, you know, surpasses mine. So I'm really excited, you know, that we're able to do it. Because you're right, you know, even after everything was available for however long, a week or whatever it is, there were still people, you know, a few days later, like, what? I missed out again? You know, and I'm like, no, not again. You know, like, it was there, man. Like, you could have bought it, you know. And then as people's shipments started to arrive, and then they're, you know, putting it in their shave of the day, and they're talking about how great it is, then people are like going to the website and wanting to buy it. It's not there. Like, we're not Amazon. You know, it's just not going to be that way. It will never be that way. But you don't want it to be that way. You know, for better or worse, like, the fact that this stuff is made by hand means that it's higher quality. And I think that, you know, we all have to remember, like, when we started to use this artisan soaps and artisan products, we were blown away, you know. And I think sometimes we can get really jaded, you know, and we talk about, like, we joke, oh, you know, we've lost the thrill. You know, people get into the hobby, they're really excited to buy everything. And then after a year or two, they're like, I'm just using Seville, you know, right? No offense, Will, if you're, I don't think Will's listening. But
Seville's great.
No offense to you guys, man. I'm just gonna offend everybody. But yeah, and it's because, you know, you sort of like lost the celebration and the joy and the curiosity of it. The same thing, you know, for me, same thing happened with music. Like, when I was younger and I couldn't really afford to buy, you know, CDs and cassettes or whatever it was, cassettes and then CDs. I joined Columbia House. I don't know if you guys remember, like, Columbia House. Yes. You could get like 12 CDs for $1 or 1 cent or whatever it was. I like celebrated each of those. I opened them carefully. I read the lyrics. I read the liner notes. I sat and I listened on the bus, at home. I mean, I celebrated those albums, you know. I won't tell you what they were. It was really embarrassing. But
oh, now I really want to know.
Then, you know, as you sort of got into like girls. The iPod, yeah. I remember being in college and like Napster was happening and all these other, you know, affiliated ones. And, you know, even just the college like network, you know, you could like drag and drop from other people and, you know, in your dorm or whatever. And like, we had just like thousands of songs and it just wasn't special anymore. You know, like the whole joy of it was gone. And I think that's partly what happens with people just like flame out because they're just acquiring and really not taking any time to like really sit with a particular product and think like this was made by somebody with thought and care and attention, you know. And I can't just use it once and be like meh and throw it away, you know. Like, I really gotta like give it respect and honor in some way. And then if it's not for me, then fine, maybe I'm gonna try to chase something else. It's kind of like, it really does mirror addiction in some ways. where you just need more and more to get that same rush and that same hit. But the best way to kind of like counter that is just to sit back and really accept the thing that you have and really kind of sit with it. I really have loved, doing crazy things like lather games where you're shaving with something different every day, and it's insane. But then like the burnout after that actually has been good too, because then I would just shave with one thing for like a whole month and just keep that in my cabinet and just use that and just really enjoy it. And sometimes it's random. I think I shaved a whole month. I shaved with Oleo Bonaire. I don't do dupes, but I don't mind using a dupe. But it's like a blue soap.
Virgin Island water.
Virgin Island water. That's right.
Oh,
Thanks,
okay.
Gerard. And it was great for summer, and I used it every day, and it was no nonsense, and I knew exactly what I was getting.
I took it to Mexico on my honeymoon, so that
I love that.
It was specifically Bonaire, so
I love that.
It's great.
Nice.
And I do the same thing. Like when I'm traveling, I use certain soaps. Like I use Oleo Shiloh. I use Rougere. There's a few that I just bring with me. And I went to Hawaii once with my wife, and I brought Mickey Lee Soapworks Luau.
Nice.
Obviously, it's a little on the nose, But, and we were talking about scents the other day. I was talking with somebody. They said, I'm smelling, one of your soaps. And, I feel like, the more that I smell it, the less I smell. I'm like, okay, well, this is actually like a thing that your brain will actually do, is that some scents will really stick in your head. And a lot of times it's because there's something that in your personal experience, it causes a reaction in your brain. Your brain gets really excited when it smells that smell. Scent is really, really powerful in terms of like calling up memories, right? So there might be some shave soaps or fragrances or whatever it might be that have notes in there that remind you of certain powerful experiences or important people, places that you've been. Those memories make that scent kind of jump out at you. The reason why is because your brain is always filtering all this input. You have 5 senses, but like, and the sense of place and whatever it is always taking in all this information. Your brain has to, in some way, filter out what's important and what's not important, right? So one of the ways that it does that is it filters out for new information or for things that give it positive feedback, or it also filters out to find, what are the negative associations, because it wants to protect itself too. So when it comes to scents and fragrances, your brain is going to do the same thing. So if you don't have anything that's like personally attached to a shave soap, unless you're smelling like Fougere Gothique and your body and your mind and brain just goes, oh, disgusting. Some people have that reaction to like a really strongly scented soap. Mm-hmm. Most shave soaps are not going to be threatening. You're going to open it up and you're like, oh, that's nice. Most of them, right?
All right, so we got some listener questions for you, Ben, and these are coming in from Instagram. The first one comes from Shave King, and he asked, any plans on selling in the UK?
Yeah, actually, I've already made contact with Finn over at Slick Boys in the UK, and we're going to be sending some soaps out to him, hopefully by the end of the month.
Wow, that's some great news for Shave King. Awesome. All right, I'm glad. Starting off good with the listener questions. All right, so now that's out of the way. Next question comes from the virtual groom room, and that is Jack from our last episode. He asks, what inspires your creation of scents?
Anything and everything. I really try to make each scent personal in some ways, and that's why if you read the descriptions, sometimes I get a little flowery with the description, but it's really genuinely what I'm thinking about when I'm trying to come up with a scent. Because otherwise, there's a million different options. You got to find some way to narrow it down. So for me, I really am not a person that came from a fragrance background. I wasn't trained in perfumery, and I certainly never really wore fragrances on a regular basis. In fact, it was more the opposite. I sort of looked at people that were wearing fragrances and projecting everywhere. It was just like, get away from me, dude. Like, what are you trying to cover up? Just take a shower and like, you'll be fine. And most people were wearing the same fragrances, especially in high school. And it was just like, got really repetitive and headachy, just didn't really like it. So for me, when I started making fragrances, it really had more to do with, what did I in particular have to say? And I wanted things to be a connection. I really felt like not only can Mammoth make the world a better place by raising awareness and funds to fight human trafficking, but maybe each scent can kind of give the user something to connect with. So that's why each scent has kind of a story behind it, and kind of like a set of values or something to think about, and that I'm hoping will actually help make the user's life better. That makes us all better people. It's not just something that we enjoy, but we can actually associate something with that scent, and maybe it just helps you think a little bit deeper and makes your daily routine a little bit better. So the scents kind of come from that point. Like I really I lean heavily on my experience in cooking food, right? So like my approach to, I love food, and I have a really broad palate. I love food from all over the world, foods and drinks and everything. And when I cook, what I do is I always try to like taste things along the way and smell and taste and think, okay, well, what's working well together and what would that be like, and experimenting. And then sometimes you have to have this mental moment of thinking like, what's missing or what's dominating, and then finding ways to balance those things. And a lot of times, you kind of get bored. And so like, I'll be at the supermarket and I'll just be like, what's that? All right, I'm going to bring that home and then figure out some way to use it. And so kind of challenging myself, my creativity in that way. So that's one of the things that I've used in my approach to creating scents also, is just being like, rather than being the person who like bought the perfumery kit and then read a bunch of books and then, tried to like recreate classic formulas and whatever. Like, I know I'm not in a classical vein, and I'm not trying to like become a perfumer in that way. So instead I'll be like, okay, well, what would convey this kind of picture, this emotion, this story? What would kind of associate in that way? And then kind of pick out some materials. So I spent a lot of time like looking through like different suppliers' websites and reading descriptions of stuff. I've looked at, different formulas, demo formulas and stuff like that too, to figure out like, well, what makes things smell one way or another. Certain fragrance materials, I've sort of had a lot of failures where you you think you're going to do one thing, and so you put it in there, but you didn't realize that this is something that can really only be used at like a micro dose level. Whereas there's other materials that can be like, a third of your formula and you'll barely smell it, I mean, I opened up a little sample. It was like a little 2 milliliter sample of cocoa aldehyde. Didn't realize that there is a warning on that. I opened it, smelled it, and I almost passed out just because it was that powerful.
Wow.
But meanwhile, if you use just a tiny little bit of that, you get this incredible, beautiful chocolate scent. But it takes so little. It's just that powerful. So for me, it's kind of learning how to balance those things. So when I'm thinking up a scent, it's figuring out, okay, well, this is kind of what I have in my mind, and then how am I going to get there? And basically just throwing a lot of stuff out there, brainstorming, and then a lot of the magic happens in like the editing. So doing like failing over and over again, smelling, thinking what's missing. Is anything screaming too much? Do I want something to scream a little bit, or do I want something to kind of retreat to the background and support? So Hugo is a good example, for instance. So it has evergreens in there, but I sort of designed it as a barbershop. I thought, well, I'm in a shave hobby. I would really love to do a barbershop, but everybody does a barbershop, and like tons of people use the same pre-blend fragrance oil even. So like literally it's like the same scent. So I don't really feel like I have anything to say in the genre of barbershop. So let me like put my own spin on it. And it was the winter, so I just kind of like went with evergreens because I love evergreen. And then I thought, well, how do we funkify it a little bit? So I brought in lots of musks. I think I used like 5 different musks. And the castoreum was like, all right, this is nasty, but like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a little bit in there, just enough to make it like warm and kind of like earthy and like anchor it to the ground a little bit. And then the citrus, like add that citrus while like, citrus fruits grow really well in the winter. And then that's a really nice kind of sharp, like the terpenes or whatever the word is, just like feeds really, really well from like the citrus, the bergamot, and the orange into the evergreen. And so it gives the impression that the citrus lasts even longer. And without you even realizing it, you're into the evergreen. It's not like citrus is gone and you're like, where did it go? Where's the fragrance? So it continues and develops and unfolds into the next aspect of the fragrance, right? And then the oak moss is in there because that sort of takes over from the evergreens. You know, it's a green scent. It kind of like, it blends really well and balances. So there's like this idea that it's developing along the way. So that's kind of like my approach, is I try to figure out like, what's my overall concept here? And then how do I get there? And I'll be honest, like every scent is different. You know, some of them I feel like went really, really well. Some of them, like Embrace, you know, which is coming up soon, I went through 30 different versions, you know, and still I'm not even sure if it's done. But like, it's at a point where I think that it's done. People are telling me that they love it, but they've been telling me that they love it since version 13, and I'm on version 30. So at some point I almost have to like, you know, put my hands under my legs and just put it out, you know, just like, forget it. I'm not going to tinker with it anymore. Right. So anyway, long story short, that's really what it's about. Everything kind of like needs to exist in its own space. And I sort of think of the fragrances and creativity as being like in a different world than me. Like I'm almost, you almost have to like take off your thinking brain and like break your brain a little bit and go into this other mode where like anything is possible and you're not going to judge or criticize along the way, because you're kind of like feeling your way in the dark to get to that point. And you hope that you're going to get there. So there's going to be a lot of dead ends and a lot of failures, and that's okay. You know, if anything, you know, you just have to become comfortable with that, you know, taking risks and knowing that a lot of the stuff that you make is going to be bad. It's going to go in the garbage. And eventually you'll make something half decent, and then you keep on editing and keep on tweaking, and then maybe you'll make something that's good. And then who knows, maybe you'll make something great. So that's kind of the process.
George, do you want to take the next question or two?
Sure. So this next one is from our friend Cody at Noble Otter. What is your favorite animal, and why is it the otter?
Otters are actually really cute. I mean, I'm a little jealous that he gets to use the otter, you know. What's my favorite animal? I'd probably have to say dogs. I just love, I mean, it's such a cliche, but like, I just love dogs, you know, and I had a dog for a long time and I miss him. Whenever I think about it, I miss him. And it's just one of those things where like, it just sort of became they become a part of your life in a different way, you know, and so I would have to say dogs. I love cats too. I know that like there's this thing out there where like you have to be either a dog person or a cat person. I don't discriminate, right? If you're not gonna bite me, which a lot of cats will, like, you know, if you're not gonna attack me and hurt me, I'm cool with you. You know, like I don't even mind like observing you from a distance. That's fine too, you know, right? But yeah, I mean, I would definitely say dogs.
And all right, this one is we have two questions from Internal. First one's a pretty straightforward one. Any plans to bring back Kryptonite this year?
Yeah, I hope to be able to do that in the summer. You know, I think it's a great, bright and fresh scent. I'm kind of not sure if I would do the green again, but people seem to love it. Like it became like a defining feature of that soap. But I also think for a lot of people, they were like, what is this? But like,
for those that don't know, it's really the only soap that you had really colored, and it was like it was highlighter green.
I went for it. Yeah.
And
maybe we'll tone down the green a little bit. I don't know.
It's Kryptonite. It's got to be that bright neon
green.
Right.
Man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's the right green for the name.
I mean, the only other way I could see if you didn't want to go with it is if you went with a green jar, like a neon green jar. But are you going to find a neon green Cult jar? No, that's not going to happen. That's
not going to do that. Cult doesn't make them. But the other thing, you know, it's funny because all the bath soaps, there actually is a kind of glow in the dark powder that you can add to soap. Oh. I have not tried it in hot process soap, but I bought some of it.
And then your face will glow in the dark.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the thing is like, to be honest, like I really highly respect that people are putting this on their face, you know, and like, so the green thing, that was really one of the biggest things with me. And also people's brushes, you know, people spend a lot of money on their brushes and they have this assumption or fear, which is legit, I get it, that like it's going to turn their brush green. It won't. It lathers pure white and you're fine. Like, not a problem. But I can't come out and say that as an official statement, because what if somebody comes out and says, well, you ruined my brush and you owe me money? I don't really know. So that's part of it. Is I don't want to just kind of be frivolous with people's skin and with people's brushes.
Both.
There's no risk.
Good reasons.
The color is skin
good
safe,
reasons.
and the color will not stain anything. You have much more risk, okay, of somebody overdosing fragrance in a soap. That will burn your face. Essential oils will burn your face. And if you're worried about your brushes, well, vanillin will actually turn your brushes from white tipped to amber and brownish tip. So there are things that can do that. Kryptonite will not do that to you.
And speaking of brushes, people remember this, back in the past. Any upcoming brush collaborations in the works?
Yes. Actually, I've got one that's been in the works since November. And the state of the pandemic being what it is, I put the order in November. This one's an international collaboration. And I'm just going to leave it at that. It's going to be really exciting. It's the one for Tobacconist, and the brushes finally made it here. And so whenever Tobacconist comes out, we're going to have some brushes for sale, and we'll do a raffle and everything, just like the old school when we did Mammoth raffles. And, we'll confuse some people, and they'll get mad, and they'll think that I'm pocketing all the raffle money as usual. And whatever. They're assholes, and they can go sit in the corner. But we're going to raise some money, and it's going to be great. I'm editing myself. So, it's a family podcast.
Which is actually more funny, because every time you do the raffle, you literally show the amount.
Yeah.
You do screenshots of the amount that you've donated. And I'm like, I don't know.
And everyone can also see the raffle page, all the money, whatever. So, but they gave me the same shit even when I did it through Rally Up, which is like an external site where I'm not collecting the money. And the CFO from the nonprofit has to actually like start the raffle. Like, I can't actually I have no control. The nonprofit is the one that actually has to like approve of me running the raffle. So people still gave me shit about it. So it is what it is. You're not really can't win everybody. And that's not the goal here. The goal is to raise money. So we're going to do that. And then I also have a brush collaboration coming up with an old favorite brush maker. And that will be for Embrace. And you guys will see what that's going to be too.
Well, that's actually brings us, it segues right into the last user submitted question. That's from Bearded Chrome Dome. When are the next set releases? And you've mentioned both Embrace and Tobacconist. So I think this is a good chance just to talk about what's coming up from you.
Yeah, I mean, those are the two that are coming out most immediately. I assume this episode is going to come out, fairly soon. So they probably won't be out yet at the time of this episode. Like I said before, we're trying to make these things in larger quantity. So it takes longer to make this stuff in larger quantity. So could we put it out tomorrow? Yeah, but we'd only have a few and people would be mad. So we're making a lot. Embrace is going to be just on my site and at WCS. It will be available at WCS. It'll be permanent, and they will be restocking it. And if they run out and don't want any more, well, I'll have it at my site. So that'll be great. And then Tobacconist is just going to drop, sort of like Mood Indigo did. It'll drop on my site first in a large quantity. And then in the next quarter, we'll offer it to retailers that if they want to add it to their order for that quarter, then they can.
Ben, as we're winding things down, I'd love to ask this question to you. And that is, could you share with us one prediction you have for this year in wet shaving?
I really think that the direction that we're going right now is in celebrating perfumery. That's why you're seeing a lot of like perfume collaborations happening. And I think what's happening is that shavers are getting tired of the same, dupe fragrances. And they're realizing, that, you really want to get something that's interesting. You got to go with someone that's making something original, and I don't just say that because that's what I'm doing. I've been doing that since the beginning. But I really do say that as being a trend. Tons of artisans are reaching out to perfumers even outside. So if they're not doing the perfumery themselves, they're reaching out to other perfumers and doing it. We're also seeing, it's not just like Creed that's coming out with their shave soaps and ADP and whatever, but, Imaginary Authors did that collaboration just a few weeks ago, a week ago, that hit collaboration with Cody from Novolata. So, and they've hinted that they're going to put out more of their scents in soap. I think that would be great to see. So I think that it's a great time to be a wet shaver. And it's always a great time to be a wet shaver, but even more so, right? The truth is the pandemic has really hit a lot of people hard, and so it's really sink or swim, for a lot of people right now. Mammoth is scaling up at possibly the worst time that, that we could be doing it. But the truth is, I feel like people are looking for something that they can help them feel good and inspire them in a little way. So, we're really glad that we're able to do it. So yeah, I think if I had to choose one thing, that would be my prediction. It's already happening, but I think it's going to happen even more this year in the future, the next year, original perfumery.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a very solid prediction. And just as we're closing things out, I want to thank you so much for coming on Lather Talk today, Ben, for really giving us the history of Mammoth, where you guys are now, and what's coming ahead. I'm personally very excited, and I just want to wish you, with all the challenges that COVID's bringing and just real life, throws our way. I just want to wish you and House of Mammoth all the best and of successes this coming year.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you guys, not just for being, personal friends, but for doing stuff like this, and really for inviting me on. It really feels like an honor. I just talked for an hour about me and what I'm doing, and that feels a little weird for me, but you guys are so supportive and so interested and excited about it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Lather Talk. You can find all the links for House of Mammoth in the show notes. We hope you enjoyed the podcast and hope to catch you next episode.